Greetings, denizens of the night, and welcome to my reliquery. Tonight we'll be discussing a topic that doesn't actually get a whole lot of attention, at least not as much as it should. The world of darkness is filled with a plethora of objects, items, trinkets, and baubles that have supernatural power. Power that most could not even fathom. These relics are spread across the entire world and are in possession of other night folk that pursue power for their own gains. Yet some of these relics are cursed upon themselves, providing great power, but also great suffering. Tonight, we'll be discussing 5 powerful supernatural relics within the world of darkness. 5 items that you should always be aware of, and potentially never seek out. The first artifact that will be discussed this night will be the Anaran Sarcophagus. I am sure you've heard of this item through your travels. Yes, the fabled sarcophagus that caused quite the uproar in Los Angeles back in 2004. Discovered by one Dr. Ingvar Johansson, it was brought over to LA amongst the Elizabeth Dane, and when it arrived, it caused quite the stir amongst the elders that have nestled themselves within Los Angeles. Rumors that there was an ancient Methuselah dwelling within, or some even more ancient, powerful kindred. It really caused quite the stir. But the truth behind their sarcophagus was a little bit more, you could call it comedic than that. Smiling Jack, a very prominent anarch, had arranged for this sarcophagus to be brought to LA in order to cause an uproar amongst the elders, simply to destabilize the Camarilla stronghold that had been taking foot there. The sarcophagus, in fact, was just a holding for a mummified king known as Meserac, a Syrian king, as a matter of fact. But some still claim that there were some supernatural happenings going on. Either way, anybody in LA had a good laugh, except for Sebastian LaCroix. He had a very bad laugh towards the end, if you know what I mean. The next artifact on the docket for discussion is a sword, known as Ainkern. It is said to be the sister blade to a blade used by one Dracula, a Kilish blade of Turkish manufacture, assisted in being made by one Durga Sin, a powerful ancient Ravnos. Ainkern is said to be able to absorb the vitae of anything and anyone it strikes. At some point in its history, it had been acquired by the Teutonic Knights and had been displayed in one of their monasteries underneath a mural depicting its use by a crusader against a Muslim. Some tales attribute Ainkern's use in the destruction of Methuselah, single-handed victories over ravenous lupines, and even tales of traveling through the shroud in the Umbra. Unfortunately, little corroborates the actual validity of this blade's power, except for one Christoph Romuald, who had come into the possession of this blade and used it against the Society of St. Leopold after he had awoken from a long torpid slumber. According to his reports, he had found himself inside this facility along with Ainkern, though he did not know what it was at that time, but he felt that he could use it, and he did so. The Society of St. Leopold's color of choice that night was red. Christoph, however, states that after much research,
he found that Ainkern was a vestige of its former self. One would shudder to think exactly how powerful this blade was in its prime, who had wielded it and why. But even still, such relics probably should remain in a more dormant state in these modern nights. Last thing we need is somebody wielding a sword that can cause earthquakes and cracks in the ground. This isn't a shonen anime, after all.
One cannot have a discussion about Ainkern without having a discussion about the sword in which Ainkern had been derived from, the Sword of Dracula. An ornate broadsword with a bejeweled hilt and guard. This regal weapon belonged to Vlad Dracul himself and later Vlad Tepes, or Dracula. This sword comes with many innate abilities. It was also crafted by Durga Sin, who viewed Vlad Dracul and Vlad Tepes as excellent candidates for the embrace, so she made the weapon with Cainite in mind. As such, the blade is quite powerful, and its powers are more documented than that of Ainkern, though you could assume that Ainkern probably possessed the same abilities to an extent as this one did. First of the Sword of Dracula's abilities is its ability to cause great damage to the flesh of supernatural creatures in which it strikes. It tears, it rends, it burns, it aggravates the wound, if you will, causing a great amount of pain and damage to any supernatural creature that goes up against it. Another one of its abilities is its ability to absorb the blood of the victims that it cuts into. No blood gushes from the wound of the cut, as all of the blood is absorbed by the blade itself, the silvery sheen turning into a dark crimson fade as the blood itself is consumed, as if the blade itself is a Cainite supping on its victims. It is a very disconcerting sight to see such things happening, but that is the power of Dracula's Blade. Another ability that the blade possesses in this turn is the ability to store and secrete the blood of which it has consumed. A very useful tool, I would say, for a Cainite, you would think, right? Well, here's the problem with that. By pressing the button under a jewel on the hilt, it can secrete the blood slowly through drips. The thing is, the blood in which the blade has absorbed is mixed with all of the blood or vitae of any creature that it strikes, whether it be lupine, mage, changeling, Cainite, what have you. All of the blood is swirled together within the blade itself, and when it secretes this blood, it is all mixed. All of the blood within the blade retains all of its supernatural properties. So you might think that this could be a great tool for a kindred to carry with them in a way to satiate their hunger in times of desperate need, but it's only as useful as how discriminate someone is with the blade's use. Ritualistic applications, however, are another matter entirely. As a matter of fact, the blade itself was crafted specifically with the demon Kupala in mind. Vlad Dracul wanted this blade to be able to defeat Kupala, which brings us to its final innate ability that it possesses, and that is to commit a sort of diablerie of sorts. Whenever the weapon kills, specifically kills, it must commit the killing stroke. It will absorb the essence of that of which it has slain to a point. This essence is stored within the blade itself. It's not like absorbing somebody's soul or spirit or something of that nature, but a piece of them that you can use in a ritualistic manner. This ability was supposed to be used against Kupala so that they may use the essence that it has stored Draculas to seal it and completely render it unable to return to the mortal coil to inflict its havoc, if you will. But unfortunately, the use of this ability was never seen to fruition, and from what I hear, that demon still exists somewhere. But in the end, you can hear the howling wails and screams of all of the victims this blade has carved into. The sword of Dracula is not to be trifled with, and as far as I can tell, it is still in the possession of Dracula himself. Some say he still plans to use it for its intended purpose. Others think that he is just merely keeping it as some supernatural bauble. One can only guess. Another supernatural artifact that I find to be quite novel, but still very potent, is Odin's bloodhorn. Yes, that Odin. Odin the All-High, the iconic god of Norse mythology. According to records, the bloodhorn possesses the ability to transform ale and mead into vitae. The process is either quite simple. You take the horn, you pour your ale or mead within it, and then you mix it with some of whatever blood you are trying to turn the ale or mead into. And in short time, all of the liquid within the horn is transformed into this blood or vitae. The fact that it can transform ale or mead into kindred vitae is very interesting. It has a lot of implications. Of course, Odin probably used this horn as a means to control his Valkyries and Einherjar back when he ruled. But one cannot really say exactly what the properties of this mystical artifact actually are, as the horn itself disappeared when Odin himself disappeared. So, unfortunately, I don't think anyone has had a chance to really study it up close. Though rumors persist that Odin and his Valkyries are still out there, waiting and biding their time, which means the Bloodhorn is most likely still in Odin's possession. Something like that popping up during these modern nights would definitely cause a frenzy, I'd think. Man, I could go for a drink myself right now. The last supernatural artifact that we'll be discussing tonight is actually one that has caused quite an uproar in these modern nights, specifically with the Tremere. You have heard of the Tremere's clan fracturing after the events following the destruction of the main chantry in Vienna, correct? You have also heard of House Karna, a separate faction within the Tremere that still allies themselves with the Camarilla, but has split themselves from the structured pyramid that the clan Tremere proper had erected for centuries. Well, one of the reasons why House Karna exists as a separate entity is because Karna herself had found something called the Book of the Grave War. The Book of the Grave War, also titled Das Buch von Grabkrieg in the original German, is an eschatological text supposedly written by a German Malkavian in the 12th or 13th century concerning Gehenna and diablerie. However, one source says that the book was penned by the ancient Jacob under the guidance of a vampire, quote-unquote, more adept in manipulation and control than any other. The book also contains clues to the breaking of blood bonds and clan ties. It was translated and studied by one Dr. Mortius and later ended up in the hands of Karna. Due to the manipulations of Jacob's alternate personality, Esau, Karna found the book in a locked chamber in the magical void of the Marquette University. Beckett eventually locates a damaged version of the Book of the Grave War in Berlin, and according to Beckett, the original is, quote-unquote,
a prize his rivals would kill to find, but copies and translations float around, and he himself holds one of the copies in his Oxford library. Nonetheless, the Tremere have tried to restrict access to the text. The book is written in German, but occasionally the author switches to an archaic Greek dialect that disappeared from use about 3,000 years ago. Some parts are written in an apparent dialect of Linear A, which neither Kindred nor Kine has ever been able to translate. Physically, it is an unremarkable book, appearing to be an illuminated manuscript of poor quality, and was probably penned in a monastery. The cover bears no title, but the first page displays it in the scribbling German hand that can be found throughout the work. The style of the hand does not change, which has convinced many that the book is the product of one author and not several, as the poor organization would suggest, which to me just confirms the fact that it was probably a Malkavian that did write this book. The author often speaks of a voice that tells him how to write and what to say. He uses a variety of invented symbols to denote the various clans. Certain symbols do not seem to relate to any particular clan extant today. It is possible that they refer to minor bloodlines of sorts. Bloodlines long lost or still hidden. For the word kindred or vampire, the author consistently uses the symbol of the Ankh. The book is divided into 7 cantos. Each canto varies widely in length and structure, and some are entirely in verse form. Other cantos are part poem and part prose, while others are entirely prose. Each canto covers an age in the history of the world and describes the jihad during that period. The author places himself in the 4th age of the history, with only 3 ages to follow. The 3rd canto is almost unintelligible. Much of it is written in that Linear A that cannot be transcribed. Dr. Mortius's essay on the Book of the Grave War is often the only source for information on it. The essay has been translated into English, French, German, Spanish, Italian, and several Slavic tongues if you ever wish to look it up and read it for yourself. But I digress. It is known that some of the kindred out there who are closely tied to Karna can gain access to the book and learn something new, something dangerous. Those were 5 supernatural artifacts that exist within the world of darkness. These artifacts that I have discussed are all related to kindred, but we all know that there are many other things that go bump in the night, and with that, many other relics, artifacts, items, trinkets that possess supernatural, dangerous abilities. Let me know what other artifacts you wish me to discuss in this reliquary. And remember, nothing good ever happens after dark.